Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. I'm Jody Atariwala and I'm your host. And today I'm very privileged to have on our show Paul PK Averna. And PK was a Navy captain with the U.S. Navy, and he was a F-14 fighter pilot, and which is it's a platform that is near and dear to my heart. So I always love it when I get a chance to chat with PK. Today's episode is a bit, on one side, it's a bit somber, as we will be remembering Dale Snodgrass, who recently passed in a tragic aircraft accident. And PK was actually in the same air wing as Snort was. And so I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for us to just talk about Snort, our memories of him, because I had the fortune and privilege to meet Snort on a few different occasions. So PK, thanks so much for being here and for taking the time.
Thanks, Jody. It's great to be with you.
Uh,
And unfortunately, with Snort's passing, it's at least an opportunity to think fondly about the time that he was with us and the leadership that he gave us and the inspiration that we all took away from watching him. If we had a chance to see him doing an air show demo or just to get to see him around the base and spend time around him is something that added value to everybody's life. Yeah.
Absolutely. PK, anybody that knows the Tomcat has heard and they've probably seen Snort's a demo routine, even if they didn't know it was Snort. Once you learn of how adept he was at operating that aircraft, boy, you'll never doubt a demo when you see it. You'll just go, that was Snort,
Yep. Yeah. The airplane was and is a beautiful machine. The way that it communicates to you, the capabilities that it had, and that's all the variants A, Bs, and Ds that we got to fly. But the ability to showcase those capabilities in front of large crowds and do it safely, but still, because of the size of the airplane and relative to other fighters that are out there, and the amount of thrust that particularly the GE motors could give during an air show demo, it was pretty awesome to be able to see one of them in person.
Absolutely. Well, Snort had he was instrumental in not only demonstrating all of the models of the F-14, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he ended up being uh, wing commander
Yep.
at Oceana when you were there.
Right. And in fact, that's where I actually got to meet him and get to work with him a little bit when I was at the weapons school at Swatsland. He and the CO of Swatsland would tend to do a lot of those air shows together. They had been crewed up in prior life. And it was always fun to have him over at Swatsland and talking about what's going on with the capability of the airplane, what we're trying to do next with the airplane, and some of the newer missions that we were taking on when the airplane started to come into its own in the air-to-ground business. The introduction of the Lantern system, he was instrumental in getting that through all I'll say the acquisition hurdles and the policy and politics that were up in DC. He managed to help guide it into a out-of-the-box capability that was not on the baseline plan when you thought a couple of years before, what were we going to improve in terms of the capability of the airplane? And it was a game changer. It launched a capability that lasted until we retired the airplane, and really filled a gap when A-12 didn't mature. So
Right. Yeah, it absolutely breathed new life into the platform. And
mhm.
and although I know the air to ground capability, the wiring was always
Yep,
in the F-14 from the beginning, it was
absolutely.
never utilized, really.
Yeah, in fact, I went through the first FRS class to have air to ground in its syllabus, dropping bombs off the airplane in the FRS. And
Awesome.
that was a pretty interesting experience, going out to places like El Centro where we would practice and have 4 Mark 83 1,000-pound bombs under the wing with retarded fins on them, and or the bags, and they A6 that was on the hold short line would be looking over, go, what is that airplane doing with bombs under it?
Awesome.
Yeah. Of course, all my attack brethren would say, yeah, there are just a few of those underneath our airplane, but nonetheless, we could go pretty fast and pretty long legged into an area and deliver with really good precision with GPS, being able to self-target with the JDAM from our lantern to pod designations, and then also just guiding in LGBs. So that was a force multiplier, to be certain.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, there's so much about the Tomcat that we could talk about, but
Yeah.
When Snort, I had the opportunity to meet Snort for the first time on board USS Theodore Roosevelt. This was in 1990, and I was up on the bridge at night, kind of trying to shoot some pictures of the evolutions on the deck. And Snort was the navigator at the time. And so, I just got to talking with him. I didn't know who he was, but I told him that I'm there because I love the F-14, and my intent was to do a book. And PK, at this time, I had just graduated high school, and I put in this request with the Navy, and my number got called up. And so they basically said, I honestly wasn't prepared at the time, but they basically said, hey, if you pass on this opportunity, you'll still be on the list, but you'll go to the back of the list. And so I pulled the trigger on it, and I got out there. So I live on the West Coast, so I flew all the way out to Virginia Beach, and ended up at Norfolk, and got a CH-53 ride out to the Theodore Roosevelt, doing carrier quals. And the air wing at the time had VF-41 and VF-84.
Yep.
And so it was awesome to see the Jolly Rogers and Black Aces. And anyways, so there I am, in the tower, and Snort's there, and he goes, well, I'm an F-14 driver, a pilot. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So we just started talking, and I told him about the photography that I was interested in, what have you. And he said, hang on, wait a sec. And so he went back to his cabin, and he came back with an 8x10 picture. And it is I'm sure you probably know it. It is
knife edge. Yeah.
It is the famous picture. And I actually, so he said, I'll let you take it if you promise to mail it back to me. And I said, sure. And I said, and he goes, you can make a copy, no problem, but just promise to mail it back. So I've got this. Oh my God, I can't.
Yeah,
I can't show it. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll have to put that in. But but it is the iconic, famous, knife edge pass behind USS America. And what an amazing picture. When I saw it, I was like, holy geez, that's awesome. Absolutely awesome. And so that was my first meeting of a few opportunities to meet Snort.
Well, I mean, the title of your podcast, Go Bold, I think certainly typifies Snort's view on machines in general.
Yes.
His approach to flying the F-14 was understanding what the limits were, but then also understanding how to actually take advantage of all the capability of the airplane and what the airframe could do. And that's a combination of all. It's not done, I'll say, brute force wise. It's actually a very intellectual approach in understanding what and how it was designed to operate, and then working with those limitations and restrictions in some cases, and working your way through them so that you actually could, in essence, max perform or be bold with the airplane. He did those things, I think, even when he was the navigator on TR, and trying to figure out how to actually get the ship turned around and provide more steaming time and stay in the constrained area that he had to keep the platform. But it's just that out of the box thinking that really was translated well into how he maneuvered the airplane around. And for those who didn't feel that they could take it to the limit or understood where the real limits were, they were going to be beat by Snort every time in a BFM fight. So, you know, it's not to suggest that you do things that are illegal or not allowed, but you have to also appreciate that there's a time and a place to actually explore the limits on the plane so that you can effectively operate it to its max capability when you need to in combat. The whole training community's focus on trying to bring people safely to the edge, help them understand what that edge looks like, feels like, and then also understand what it's like if you fall off the edge to be able to recover and keep going and not put yourself into extremis. It's that is, I think, as we continue to press the edge, and is a hallmark of the professional training community. And so that, you know, the Snort's leading fighter wing, leading the Tomcat community at the time, really, I think, helped a whole generation of air crew be the very best that they could be in the airplane.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is so important when you have a leader like that, you know, recognizes that, yes, just like you say, you're not doing something illegal or inappropriate, but you are pushing the limits because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, being a fighter pilot is not a docile career path.
Right.
You know,
right.
And so if you're able to understand the capabilities within your jet, that hopefully gives you that edge over a potential opponent.
Yep. And for Snort, he had a lot of flight time in the airplane. I mean, he got to fly that airplane pretty much every day if he could. And I mean, when you start having that many flight hours in the airplane, it is a extension of your mind. So for those of us who were going through phases where there wasn't many flight hours available simply because of parts availability at that time, or we were surging and we had to prioritize for people that were deployed. You know, there were times when I'd get like one flight a month, and I was at the weapons school, and that was just it was very hard to climb back in the airplane and then get to a point not only where you could maneuver the airplane with that intuition that you needed to have, but also be able to focus on your job, which was to assess how the other guy was doing in the other cockpit while you were fighting with him. So those were because he could get all that flight time in the airplane. He was very, very good just out of the box. So, you know, that was always something that was a kind of a high watermark to aspire to be that proficient in your platform. But it goes back to that, as you're talking about with pilots in general, and at least fighter pilots, and that might be going into combat. If you leave things on the table and get killed, you know, not a good thing. Right?
No, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Put it all out there.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Like, I mean, you know, he was in a very fortunate position with his rank and with his position. He was able to fly a lot. I think he put himself on the, you know, on the schedule whenever he wanted. So
yeah, I think there's some maintenance master chiefs when he would come in to check out the airplane that were like, oh boy, we're going to be working a little bit longer tonight. To get it back in order.
Yeah, I've heard stories of Snort overstressing the jet on more than a few occasions. So
well, I mean, it gets back to that whole area of restrictions and limitations on the airplane, and some of the things that were just engineering design, like the torque tubes on the slats that would be motoring out automatically or coming back in as you were loading the jet up. If you loaded the jet up asymmetrically, like a rolling pull, and those things were motoring out or motoring back in, there's a chance that because of the thinness of the tubes themselves, that they would snap. And then if they snap, you'd have one locked out in a position and the other one would not. And then you'd have an asymmetrical tendency to roll. And in a high alpha environment, that tendency, if you can't control it, is going to end up causing you to depart controlled flight. So it's a hassle on land. It's a bigger hassle on the boat, because when you are now kind of having to come in as an emergency, not an emergency, but as a you know, less than performing airplane, you might have to do a straight in, then getting a spot where you could actually sweep the wings forward so that you could actually take the torque tubes out, put new ones in, and button it back up. It was a headache. So people tended to be cautious.
Right.
But around land, on the beach, as we say,
Yeah.
it was, there were a few of those that happened, I guess. And once you've experienced it, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand why that happened. It's dumb. We'll figure out how to make sure that our pulls are actually symmetrical when we're loading up. And then it's also, as we're deploying our flaps, maybe for low speed fights, there's certain airspeeds and G loadings that you'd want to keep in mind if you're going to do those kinds of things. And it's the people that are actually thinking ahead of the airplane where that's not a big deal, because it's like, okay, at this point I'll be in a position where I can do that, and I'm stuck there until I'm going to be into that position where I can bring them back in and actually get some speed back on the airplane. So for all those things, Snort was a master at it.
Absolutely. There's I every time I think of Snort, there's one particular maneuver in his demonstration routine that I absolutely love. And I don't think it's really and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the pilot, PK, but you flew the Tomcat. So, but it just looks so incredibly dynamic and beautiful. And it's basically, he's coming in to do essentially touch and go, but he keeps the energy on the jet, and almost where the shocks have not compressed on the landing gear. It's you're on the deck, the wheels are turning, but you haven't put all the weight down on it. And then he gives it puts it into burner and reefs back on the stick and banks, and it's an aggressive bank up off the runway, and with full zone 5 burner. I wasn't actually, I'm not, now I got to correct myself, because I know in the A it would be called zone 5, but I don't know if it was on the B and D with the F-110s.
No, that was just max AB. They didn't
Max AB.
have those staged zones or burner rings that would light off in sequence. So zone one burner ring, and then all the way through with the TF-30s. With the GEs, it was just a progressive, more fuel being dumped back there in the afterburning section.
It just, either way, whichever jet it is, it looks absolutely beautiful. And I always think of that maneuver because it's so impressive. It looks absolutely incredible.
Well, I mean, the Tomcat basic weight for a B, D, they're somewhere around 42,000 to 44,000 pounds, in that range. And then with an internal fuel load of 16,000 pounds, you're talking 60,000 pounds, probably somewhere in there at takeoff. And the airshow birds are, they typically wouldn't have the external tanks on them. They're clean airplanes.
Right.
So you got a lot of lift out of that tunnel area, with the wings out, the flaps down. But the burners on the GE motors, I mean, you're talking 30,000 pounds of thrust per side. So you're at 1-to-1 at takeoff. So with 1-to-1 thrust to weight ratio, you're accelerating vertically. So when you reef the nose up like that and doing that sharp angle of bank, you're still generating lift and you're still climbing. So, it's a great way of illustrating the power of that thing.
Absolutely beautiful, and he did it exquisitely, what can we say? It's such a tragedy, and a big loss, because after the Navy, Snort, obviously, he had such a name behind him that he continued to fly. And I know because I saw his office at Draken in Lakeland, Florida. And those guys, they all loved him because Snort had such a presence about him. But I know because I saw it there in their hangar, they had this big kind of a model of an F-14, and they were actually gonna surprise him with it, and I was happy to see it before he got it. But it's just so cool. And then one of the other times that I saw him, he actually flew an A4 Skyhawk that Draken had, and this was it was a collaboration with another company, but they flew it up to Ottawa to demonstrate to people in the defense industry and in government. But yeah, so there I was at the airport. This A4 rolls in, and who climbs out of it? Snort Snodgrass. It was, and it was funny. Like, I mean, I'm absolutely confident he didn't remember me from the Theodore Roosevelt years before. I had aged, but
He hadn't.
but he hadn't. Not. And but I reminded him that we had met, and he was as receptive and gracious as he was the first time around. So yeah, what a pleasure to see him. And what is, do you have a particular story or a memory of Snort, or even if it wasn't a personal one, PK, like, I mean, something that you know of him or heard about him?
Well, he always had that quiet confidence, easygoing look, but he definitely exuded that he was a very competent aviator.
Right.
And when I was going through Top Gun at the course out at Fallon, they had come out, he and my boss at Swatslant, Dagwood Shoal, and they were out filming a episode of The Extremists that they were tagging along, and they actually had Snort was out there in one of the F-14As that Top Gun had, and he was fighting against one of my classmates in a Hornet. And so at the end of that dogfight, my buddy Stitch Pritchard came back in. He's like, I didn't think the Tomcat could do that.
That's awesome.
and I saw a couple of years later when they when that episode of The Extremists came out, and it's got Dagwood standing by the airplane with Snort, and he's like, that young Hornet pilot's got to rethink his existence. And it's great when you have a hero like that can actually be that competent in the airplane to give a next or a better airplane from a agility and slow speed maneuvering perspective a run for its money. And it does come down to the pilot.
Yes. Yeah.
A great airplane can make an average pilot pretty good. A good airplane in the hands of a great pilot is extremely hard to beat. So,
I think that is the perfect spot to leave it off, PK, because he was a great pilot and he flew a great aircraft. So what a combo,
Oh yeah.
And just like you did, you flew a great aircraft as well. And you're going to have to regale me with some of your stories as well, because I'm sure that you could hold your own. And the funny thing is, with you both being pilots, obviously you would not have flown in the same jet together. But,
Correct.
But it's pretty cool to know that you flew in the same air wing with him. And,
oh yeah, in the community. I mean, and it was a great community overall.
Yeah.
I mean, the airplane had its challenges, but figuring out how to work through those and actually deliver a real capability to the nation day in, day out, day, night, anywhere in the world, was very humbling to be a part of. So, when you have great leaders, it's a lot easier. And I think that's something that we all hope for the future generations, that they can have people like Snort.
Absolutely. Well, I will lift my glass to him, and if it'll show up here,
Yep.
I'm foiled by technology here, PK, but
Yeah.
there you go. I love the smell of jet fuel in the morning.
Nice.
That's for Snort. So,
all right. Indeed.
Hey, PK, thank you so much for sharing some time with me, and thank you for going down memory lane and honoring Snort. Very kind of you, and I wish you well, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
All right. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Take care of yourself.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. That was PK Averna, former Navy captain with the U.S. Navy and F-14 Tomcat fighter pilot. If you have any questions for PK, please reach out to us at Go Bold, and you can reach us at goboldthepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great day.